So now I'm making you the host. Okay.
Awesome. All right.
Awesome.
I am going to hit us live on Facebook.
And we've opened the gate. We've opened the gate. So now we've got Kelly's video working. We've let people in. We're going live on Facebook. I think we're ticking all the boxes.
All happening.
In the first minute of the webinar.
And I'm sharing my screen and nothing bad has happened. So that means the new computer's working.
Yay. I love when technology works.
Happens from time to time, Kelly. Happens from time to time.
Well, guess what? We're not going live on Facebook because I think Cindy must have demoted me because I don't have access to any longer share it to our Facebook page. So Cindy, you might have to take over that in the background.
Uh-oh.
Let's see. Maybe Mandy, make Cindy the host because I think that's where the button shows up. It only shows up if you're the host. So maybe make her the host for now.
Okay.
And we'll see if we can overcome the Facebook thing. But Kelly, while we let the rest of our friends join us, maybe you can tell us a little more about that awesome wall.
Oh, yes. So to be fair, I saw this on TikTok probably a year ago, and then a friend of mine sent it to me and I was like, oh, that could be cool. And I saw it in person at a like a bridal dress shop, and I was like, oh. So once I saw it up close, I was like, oh, now I really want it. And so I ordered 2 packs, and I'm actually gonna fill this wall in too, so that we have
that
full
space.
disco ball effect. But yeah, I'm super excited about it. I figured it brings like a little bit of fun, and I don't know, just like when you have something, you look at something, it just kind of makes you smile. So when I walk into my office, I'm like, oh, I love this place. So there's my glitter wall.
I give it 3 months before Mandy has one, and it's virtual background.
They're on Amazon.
I was thinking about it. And it does look like we are live on Facebook now. I think I hit the button while Kelly was still the host. So that's probably why we couldn't.
Oh, okay.
We're good.
Yay.
So we are so excited to have Kelly joining us today. Sam and I had the pleasure of meeting Kelly. I guess it's been almost 2 years ago now at Appy Camp. And that's kind of where we've met all of our friends, Sam, and the was at Appy Camp. And then we have ran into her over the past couple of years at different conventions. And we are so excited that she has agreed to join us on our webinar today. But looking at everything that you do, Kelly, I'm shocked that you actually have time to join us on a webinar.
This list makes it look a lot more complicated. I don't do all these things at the same time.
Girl, own it, man. You are rocking it. This is amazing. That is such an accomplishment, all of the stuff that you've done over over your career. And then whenever you're not doing that, you're paddleboarding, cooking, and building beautiful DIY walls behind you. Yeah, that's awesome.
Hence my wall.
Yes. So we are super excited to have you here with us today and talk to Sam and I about security.
Yes, I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. Yeah, we did meet at Appy Camp, and it's been about 2 years, and I'm super excited because we have another Appy Camp coming up. So I'm gonna get to see you guys again.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is my last 8 years or so because I've been in business for about 8 years now. So that was the start of my journey.
Kelly, you don't even look old enough to have 8 years in a career like this.
Thanks.
Yeah, good for you, girl.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Well, I know I'm for sure looking forward to hearing about some of your experiences, not only over the last 8 years, but even before that, because you've been in the industry longer than that. And hearing about how some of this has kind of translated to your real world, and maybe some of this will be new, and we'll have some cool conversations about that too.
Awesome. Let's do it.
All right. So, Here we go. So today it's really going to be more of a conversation, but we are going to cover off on some kind of specific stuff. Um, as accountants, everyone here knows that not only are you dealing with sensitive financial data for your clients and for your firm, but you have a responsibility to protect that data. But how does that change when we start looking at SaaS? So that software as a service. Now we're talking about things like QBO, right? We're talking about a vendor is solely responsible for managing your software, your updates, and holding on to your data. But how does the security conversation change when we move into a SaaS world versus something that's on-prem or lives on your laptop as a solopreneur? Maybe everything that you've ever used has just lived on your laptop. And that was often the story, I'd say 8-10 years ago. And then there was this cloud adoption. So those typically desktop apps were moving to the cloud. So services like Swissnet and Right Networks, right? We were hosting that QuickBooks desktop software and other software. But then there was another shift, right? Then those SaaS-based products became robust enough to start replacing some of those desktop products. And as an industry, we started to move in that direction and adopt it for a number of reasons that we're going to talk about later this morning. But yeah, the security conversation in general has been shifting as the responsibility for maintaining and housing and accessing that data has shifted. So we're going to be talking some more about that. And we're going to be talking about some things that you can do proactively to vet those vendors. So I'm asking them some pretty pointed questions and finding out exactly what they're doing and how they would respond to incidents so that you can document and have all of that on file for your own peace of mind, as well as for auditors if you're subject to audits, which some of you are going to be. So we'll also be talking about endpoint considerations. So those laptops, those desktops that you actually use to access the software. And then we're going to have some recommendations and solutions for you.
Awesome. I'm excited.
All right. So we'll dive into our first polling question. Just get that out of the way. There's 3 total. There's no CPE for this. So you don't have to worry about answering a certain number of them to get credit or anything like that. But we do like to ask some questions, not only so that we know where you are in your security journey, but so that maybe we get you thinking about some things that you're not already thinking about. And this is a cool question, I think, for us, because 2 years ago, and Kelly, tell me if this resonates, I don't think smaller firms were really budgeting for cybersecurity.
That's a fair statement. Yeah, I would say, especially kind of working by myself, which I have done for the majority of my career. I kind of looked at it like I'm in a bubble. And so I'm sharing with myself typically, right? But then I didn't take into consideration when I'm sending stuff to clients sometimes or other CPAs and how I'm working with other firms or other technology. And so for sure, it's not something that I really ever thought to budget for. I figured I was doing an okay job.
Yeah, I love what you said about the bubble, because I've talked with hundreds of firms over the years, and especially the small ones, the 1 to 2 people in the firm. It's like, we're not a target. We're not dealing with governments or anything that anybody would want to get to.
Also,
but
depending on your role. So
yeah,
as a bookkeeper versus CPA, we have different, rules or what applies, to each of our roles. And so that's another factor. When I first started, I was told like, oh, you're fine. It's just you. You're going to be working with primarily just your clients' data, and you're going to talk to your clients, and it's going to be great. And now I'm like, oh, now I talk to my clients. I use apps. I'm working with, their, like I said, their team, their CPA, like what's on the other side of that. And so there is more of a responsibility now, even in the different roles that we're, all in.
100%. So it goes beyond you. Right now, it's a conversation about collaboration and vendors and with the rapid evolution of AI, I think we're going to see even more vulnerabilities getting exploited, and that's where employee training, awareness training, and protecting those endpoints is also going to become really important. In fact, I was I was listening to a webinar Microsoft was giving, and they were talking about the known vulnerabilities of Windows. And they said, yeah, we know that Windows has some vulnerabilities. We get that. There are things that can be exploited. 93% of those can't be exploited if the person, the identity on that machine isn't a local administrator. So, that's where it gets me thinking, well,
Wow.
what does that mean for the IT industry, right? How do
Right.
we take away administrative privilege from people like you, Kelly, but still
I,
give you
oh my
enough
God,
freedom and
it makes me
flexibility
panic.
to do everything that you need to be able to do without getting in your
Right.
way too much, right? Because that's the balance. And we're going to talk about balance some more, but crazy 93% of the known vulnerabilities just
Wow.
simply aren't vulnerabilities if you're not a local admin.
Wow. I also, so immediately it was like, take away control. So as an
Yeah.
accountant, my control freak kind of set in. I'm like, what? Like, I can't imagine reaching out, like, I need permission to download something or I can't access something. Yeah, I would have a heart attack, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah. And today isn't the day for us to talk about the zero trust architecture or conditional access or anything like that. But those much more techie conversations
Yeah.
are all about that. It's like, how do we take away privilege without negatively impacting efficiency and freaking people out?
Yeah.
And I'm one of those people. I'm right there with you. So forever I was an admin in every system, every tool on my desktop. I was like, nope, I have to be an admin everywhere. And our security people would be like, now listen, Sam, you don't need to be an administrator here. And I'm like, no, I really do, because once a year I need to do this thing. And they're like, okay, once a year we'll elevate your privilege, but come on, like, you don't need to be an admin. And that's a shift I've had to have too. And I think that's one that um that's a conversation we're going to start having with a lot more people. Is
Yeah.
you don't really have to be an admin.
When you break it down, it's true, right? Like, you don't actually need the access. I think it's the fear, or there's some kind of trigger that goes off when you're like, oh my gosh, but what if,
Yeah.
what if
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to download this thing, or what if I need this app for my client, or what if, and so you
Yeah.
immediately go into this panic mode,
Yeah.
which you're right, you probably don't actually need the access more than that 1 or 2 times a year. But the scenario, what am I giving up? I think that's where you panic a little bit.
I'm right there with you. So so all right, so let's get back to the
Yes.
topic. So when we're talking about SaaS, so we're talking about software as a service, we're talking about all those web-based applications that we're using. In SaaS, we can even think about our bank. Right? We
Yeah.
log into Chase or Bank of America. That's all SaaS. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about SaaS solutions. So we're going to be talking about prioritizing security in four key areas here. I think one's going to be risk management, and we'll talk about some risk management strategies. Cyber criminals are often targeting accounting systems simply because they contain valuable financial information, stuff
Yeah.
that can be exploited in a way that they can get payment. That's what it comes down
Yeah.
to. If we exploit the system, we get this information, then we can exploit it in such a way that we'll get a paycheck.
We are often blindly trusted by our clients. And so we have
Yes.
access to a lot of things, um, often things they don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
But with that, there's a lot of, I guess, exposure in some way, but we have access to, like you said, the bank, but also additionally different files and tax returns and documents, just important documents, identifying documents, stuff with social security numbers,
Mhm.
addresses, and information essentially that not a lot of other industries, need or have access to. And so I think for us, it's become so commonplace that sometimes we forget how important that stuff is or how sensitive that stuff is.
Mhm.
Um, and so we don't even, think about it as much anymore.
Yeah, 100%, which is why things like phishing and ransomware become so scary for this industry, because you might hold PII, that personally identifiable information, for thousands upon thousands of people. You might only have 10 clients, but maybe they all have 100 employees, and you're doing the payroll for them all.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So suddenly it's not just about 10 clients, it's about 10 clients plus every employee they've had in the past 7 years that you're maintaining records for, or heaven forbid, you're maintaining data a lot longer than you're maybe required to, and you haven't been doing that spring cleaning that's so important too.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of stuff lives on our just in our devices, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. We should have another conversation about that sometime, Kelly. Another one's going to be about the regulatory compliance. So a lot of the folks that are going to be listening to this are accountants, and they have to adhere to that FTC safeguards rule. So there's going to be things that you want to ask your vendors about and make sure that they align with your requirements, right? Because again, it's not a one-way conversation. Another one's going to be about data protection and privacy. Who has access? What kind of access do they have? How is my information secured? And then the integrity and reliability of the records. So, again, are there logs? Logs for who's making changes, logs for who's accessing it? Things like that are all super important when we start looking at moving to these pure SaaS-based firms. So it's not just a technical conversation anymore. It really is a business issue. I think we've talked about that.
I think also like I said, so 8 years ago, it was like, oh, no bigs, like don't even worry about it, you know? And then now a lot of it is that responsibility does fall on me, right? Like I'm that, I guess I'm the point of contact. I'm the person that my client is speaking to, but what I'm then choosing to use and filter through and whatever, however I'm handling the data and the information, that's now on me. And 8 years ago versus now, there's a lot more to worry about.
And we're even seeing, and tell me if this is happening for you yet, we're starting to see clients come to their accountants and bookkeepers and asking them about security. What are you doing? What should I be doing? Should I be doing that too?
Right. That's exactly what I was getting ready to say, Sam. I mean, the small businesses are getting a little more knowledge about they need to be more secure. And so they're reaching out to their people that they trust and been like, what are you doing to keep myself secure? My stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
And I've even seen it internally where they're putting kind of checks and balances in for their employees. Who has access to what, kind of changing that admin structure, who needs that actual information versus in the past where you would just kind of give somebody a login, and now you're more wary of, just kind of handing over that information. So just the general awareness from clients has changed as well.
Even when I started at Swissnet 8 years ago, and maybe this is a good time to bring up the Visory.
I was going to say, we got to tell everyone.
Here we go.
Yeah. When I started 8 years ago, they were like, here's your credentials. Here's your Z drive. And the Z drive was everything. It was Intuit licensing reports that we were handing over to Intuit on all of our clients. It was, Microsoft licensing reports. It was results of penetration tests and disaster recovery attempts. And so it was like all this stuff, and I didn't need it. It wasn't like it was dangerous for me to have it, but it brings us back to like the conversations that we're having now around permissions, least privileged access. Like I only need access at that time. I only needed access to the sales and training files, right? I didn't need access to every technician.
You had this like data overload situation.
Yeah. Hundreds of folders, and 98% of them had nothing to do with my function in the business. So like, was there a reason to give it to me? Well, no, but it was easy enough to do. So
I was gonna say it was easier than splitting it all up and then having to divide access to just the little parts and kind of organizing all of it. Whereas now, even just the way I structure, my folders is a little different so that I can give specific access to what's needed rather than everything.
Yeah, there it is. So when we start to look at moving to more modern applications, those SaaS-based applications, and even SaaS-based file sharing, you can think about SharePoint as SaaS too, right? Because it does have that web interface and the file structure, and now you can start to get a little more modern with the permissions and sharing and who can do what with what, right? You can give view-only access, you can give full access, you can prevent downloads, you can
Yep.
even get as crazy as preventing people from taking screenshots of something that you have in Microsoft that you've shared with them to keep it confidential. So there's some really
Yeah.
cool stuff that's happening out
We
there.
see that with some apps too. Like
Yeah.
if you're on your banking app, you can't take a screenshot of your, even after you log in, let's say your bank balance, stuff like that. You can't take a screenshot in most banking apps. It's
Yeah.
not. So yeah, there's definitely, I would say there's increased, I don't know if I would call it security, but there's definitely, I guess, a tightening up on what you have access to limit the vulnerability.
And not only what you have access to, but what you can do with it, which is what you were
Right.
just talking about, right? You can access the balance,
Right.
but you can't take it away from that app. You can't take a screenshot of it. You can't
Yeah.
copy and paste it. It's limited. So
Yeah.
so that's what's really important. And I think that addresses some of the challenges on this slide, but some of the benefits, things that are driving factors to moving away from those more legacy desktop applications and legacy ways of doing things are obviously going to be the flexibility of, working wherever, whenever, and from any device. And even though clouds kind of offered that for a long time, these SaaS applications now with the mobile apps, I mean, there are apps that I never use the full web version anymore.
Right.
Everything I need is really in that mobile app at this point. It's so simple.
Yeah. So the other side of that too is with all of this, SaaS technology, there's a convenience factor to
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of it, and so you're right. Like you log into an app and it kind of gives you everything you need right there. Why am I going to take it a step further to go online, pull up a website, click into? But there are also certain things where they're like, sorry, you can't do this from a phone.
Yeah.
You're going to have to log in to change your password or whatever it might be, right? Um, and I always kind of find it funny that it'll be like the app that I feel like needs the least security is the one that I have to, get 3 codes for and and a secret password and all this. And I'm like, I just wanted to use my scheduler. This is silly. But like some of them are more, I guess, advanced, if you will, when it comes to that stuff, and
Yeah.
some are very lax. And I always find it funny which ones are kind of digging in where they're, in my opinion, is not much exposed.
Does it make you scratch your head and be like, well, wait a minute, why doesn't this time and expense that I'm using for this client make me jump through these hoops?
Right. Or why doesn't my bank app do this?
Right? Yeah.
Why don't I have to do this for some of my accounting apps? Like, yeah, it definitely makes you think when something comes up. And also I do love the frustration that comes with it. Everyone's like, oh, I need a code. Oh, I need a secret key. Oh, I need this thing. And I'm like, it's for your own good.
Yeah.
It's all
I
for
have,
your own good.
I have to remind myself of that on a daily basis whenever I get those, because I get so frustrated and I'm like, gosh, I can't remember what I said on that challenge question 20 years ago whenever I set
Right.
up.
Some of them are
Same. Yeah.
situational.
And sometimes I'll shake my fist and be like, but I'm an administrator. Just let me in.
Just let me in. Yeah.
No.
I own this account. I'm like, sorry.
No.
Can't let you in. You're
No.
locked out. Okay, so
And then of
sorry, we
course
got
the
away from the
accessibility.
slides. Yeah.
Of course, the accessibility comes with that too. So we talked about the mobile apps, and then cost effectiveness. I think in most cases, what we're finding with these SaaS-based solutions is the pricing is very transparent. It's predictable. There's not a lot of variability in it, except for, when we add and remove users from the system. And a lot of times it's 30-day contracts, right? It's not these long-term contracts that we might have seen with some support plans for some applications back in the day.
Yeah. And they've had to obviously adapt, some of them just to stay alive, so to speak.
Yeah.
But the ones that have adapted and grown, I feel like they're, to me, it means that they're staying current, they're staying on top of things. They're looking to make it better for their clients, they're looking to make it better for users, etc. And so I always find it, I'd rather work with a company that's making those changes and those updates than one that doesn't feel that they're necessary, you know?
Yeah, totally. But do you still sometimes, so I do this, maybe I'm the only one. Sometimes I'll look for a new solution and I'll be like, not another subscription. Why can't I just buy the software?
Sometimes, I mean, to be fair, I'm I moved away from probably buying the software a long time ago. There was, and actually I still use it. There is a program that I had to download, and they made it very clear that it would live on my computer. It doesn't connect out to the internet in any way. Once I have it, I can use it and that's it. And so I always thought, except that was probably one of the only ones where I was like, oh, this is very different for me. You know, it was something that I was using to track time. And so it was helping me kind of keep track of my movements on the computer, but
Okay.
not actually connecting out,
Okay.
which was kind of backwards. But I was like, oh, but also who would need this? I'm the only one that wants to see this. I have no intention of sharing, you know, what I'm doing and clicking on and how much time I'm spending on a, you know, website. But for me, it was a nice way to analyze my time. Um, and so that's probably one of the only ones where it was like, we are only on your computer. We don't have a SaaS login. There's no online, you know, component to this.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's different. I haven't seen that in a while.
Which makes sense for the use case, right? That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we talked about benefits, challenges. We're going to dig in on some of these. The first two kind of stand on their own: data security and privacy concerns. Third one, connectivity. And I think that this one almost goes without saying, right? If it's SaaS, it's on the internet. You have to have an internet connection. Some of the other cloud solutions we might have used in the past, like remote desktop kind of situations, Citrix kind of situations, the reliance on the connectivity to the internet was a little bigger for those than I think some of these SaaS apps are, right? You can have
Absolutely.
a pretty crappy internet connection and still get onto your bank.
Yeah.
So things shifted a little. So I think the challenge is also a benefit in this case. There's a little bit of crossover on that third one.
For sure. I think I remember when I first started, I had a client that had a hosted environment for desktop, and they had it, you know, on this one computer that lived in the server room that was God knows how old, and it used to
Classic.
take us forever just to open QuickBooks, like just to run
Yeah.
QuickBooks. And I was like, this is so frustrating. Why would anybody sign up for this? But the access, like the dependency on access, trying to access it from home would be more challenging than if I was in their office. When I was in their office, then it was more of a speed issue and how long is it going to take us just to open QuickBooks and actually get in there. But now, I mean, I moved them online as quickly as I could, and we kind of made the change there, with one of the major arguments being the dependency on connecting and the access that we weren't getting. Um, so that can also be, I guess, challenge, yes, but also maybe motivation sometimes to make those changes.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So we've been talking about vendor responsibility for security and data privacy, as well as some of the things that firms have to do. We're going to go a little deeper into some of those, but first we do have a checklist that we put together, and this sort of came a couple of years ago, actually, and it's been revised over the years, but this came about because clients were asking us, you know, hey, how do I get the information that I need from this third party that I'm thinking about using and know that my stuff's going to be safe? How do I do that? So we sat down and we put together a list of questions to facilitate that conversation more than
And
anything.
how often do you have to update this?
Once a year we look at it and just say, has anything major changed? It's high enough level, I think,
Mm-hmm.
that it covers the big nuggets that don't change that often. The things that would change would be things about regulatory compliance. So, you know, is SOC 2 still the standard for keeping this kind of information in the cloud? And if yes, then great, we don't need to update this thing. You know, if that ever changes and there's some new compliance acronym that comes out, or they rename SOC, which that's not
Right.
going to happen. Right? That would be a big overall, but yeah, for the most part, tweaks here and there, but
Yeah.
no big changes. No big
But
changes.
it's also good for our clients to, like, if they're trying to decide which application, they have two competitive apps and they're trying to decide which one's best for them, they fill out one of these assessment checklists on each application. And then
Right.
they go through the pros and cons and it'll help them decide which one fits better for them.
Yeah,
I
it
also,
takes it a
oh,
step
sorry.
beyond just like the feature comparison between the two apps, right? That's what you're
Right.
Yeah.
saying. It's okay.
Yep.
Sorry, Kelly.
Oh, no, no, no. I was going to say another step further. So the other thing is, if you're not sure about these things, you can take something like this, and I've done it. You can take something like this to a vendor or an app, I guess, a person that works there,
Yeah.
and have them help you understand some of these things. And so a lot of times, yes, you might be able to find some of it on their website or their descriptions, terms and conditions. But if there are areas you have questions about or something you have concerns about, I always encourage people to reach out to the app and explain, this is what I'm looking for. This is where my concern is. Do you guys do this thing? Are you, this level of security? Oftentimes they're prepared to answer those questions. I think something like this makes it easier for us to ask the right questions. And so this is kind of a great tool for being able to say, I don't want to miss anything. I also want to fully understand, like you said, if you're comparing two apps and you kind of want to see where each of them falls, it's another way to do it. But reaching out to vendors and asking them, I totally, totally encourage that. And I don't think enough of us do it because we don't look at it like, I think we kind of forget that there are people behind them sometimes. And then we're just looking at, a solution, but oftentimes there's somebody there that's going to be able to help you understand these things.
The other thing that I think this does is helps to remind the industry that the cloud isn't inherently safe. And we do need to have these conversations with our vendors. And if there are vendors that don't want to have these conversations, that's a giant red flag, right? That's like,
Absolutely.
well, what do you mean you don't want to share your security practices with me? So
Yeah.
And we hear all the time, well, I'm in the cloud, everything's good. You need to ask that application in the event that their data's gone, do they have backup somewhere? Because most of them don't. I mean, QuickBooks Online, Intuit, or O365, in their SLAs, they are not responsible for your data.
Right.
In the event that there is a total disaster and your data is gone, they're not held liable for that. It's on you to make sure that you have backups if that application is not doing that for you.
And there are oftentimes solutions for that, right? So
Oh yeah,
you can also use other applications to back up your own data.
applications.
Yeah, like other apps. Yeah, no, you're totally right. And that goes back to, whose responsibility is it and who does it fall on and what if something goes wrong? And oftentimes it comes back to us.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So we've made this available. We'll include it in our follow-up tomorrow after the webinar for everyone that attended, of course, but you can grab it off the QR code as well. So I think that brings us to considerations when choosing a vendor. It's a good spot to jump to. So we've got our top 4 on this slide. So reputation and support, we saw that on the checklist as well. Authentication and permissions, and security and transparency and user training. And user training is one of my hot button topics for sure, because it's like, I can't tell you how many times I've bought a piece of software or subscribed to a new SaaS service that I was sure was going to revolutionize the way that I did things. And I ended up putting it on the shelf. I just couldn't adopt it, or my team couldn't adopt it. And it's because there was a lack of support and user training, and just the adoption support that we really needed to make that app a successful part of our workflow just wasn't there. How many times have you seen something like that, Kelly?
Oh, for sure. I'm going to say oftentimes you don't hear people complaining about security so much as support and customer service, and the usability of it, the user friendliness, I guess, if you will. And so a lot of times what people wind up leaving over is stuff like user training and support, not so much the other things that we deem to be very important. But uh, if I mean that it comes down to, if you can't use it, if it can't become part of your flow, if it's too difficult and you have to go out of the way every time, then it's not going to be a fit, right? And so sometimes we don't even get to the point of security and stuff, because you try something or you demo something and you're just like, oh, this is not what I thought it was, or
Yeah.
oh, I have to do this special thing to access it, or I have to do this weird, weird way of using this workflow that I'm totally not used to. Um, and so I feel like most apps die at that stage of support and adaptability. And before we even get into the nitty gritty of, the security and authentication.
Yeah.
But support, I would say the first two, reputation and support and user training, those fall on the more human side of things when it comes to apps. And so it's a big place where a lot of them can fall short.
For sure. And, one of the things that is inspiring about this industry, even at Appy Camp, it really underscored this, but the app vendors that are in accounting are so committed to making their product work effectively for the industry that they will take that feedback. Like, they're open ears. The good ones are ears open. They're asking for it. Give us the feedback. Tell us what you need. Tell us how to make this better. The ones that
Those
are
are
going
my
to be really
people.
successful and stick around are those. That's the ones.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
so there's some kind of, I guess, vulnerability in admitting what you don't know or don't understand. And we often say to our clients, like, you didn't go into business to learn accounting, right? Well, the same is usually true for technology, apps that we're using. They didn't go into business necessarily. And oftentimes they may not even start out as a solution for accounting,
Yeah.
right? So they didn't go into business to learn accounting, but the ones that admit that and then work with accountants to make it better for us, make it a better experience, overall make it better. Those are the ones that I see stick around. Those are the ones that build that loyalty. People come back, people recommend them, so that reputation and their support grows, and kind of the adaptability there, it grows with it. Because it's a niche. We have like weird niche needs, if you will. So, right. So like we have very specific stuff that we ask for that not most industries are asking for. So
Mm,
in addition to, hey, we wanted to do all these things, we also needed to be this level of security. We also need to have access for these people, but not all the access. We need some
yeah.
of the access. I'm going to need a certain login. My clients are going to need a certain login. There's just different ways and different things that we're requesting that oftentimes they don't think of. They're like, oh, I built this solution to fix this thing, right? I need to connect this app to this app, and I have all of the data coming into QuickBooks, whatever that looks like. And so they're like, oh, I built this for, let's say, I'm going to use one very random one. I do a lot of e-commerce. I built this for Etsy sellers. Like, okay, cool. So I have an Etsy shop and now I can do all this stuff. And then the accountant comes in and says, oh, no, no, no. This isn't connected the right way. This isn't going here the right way.
Yep.
This person doesn't need access. This isn't secure. Where's your data being saved? And everyone's like, oh, we didn't think of those things. We were just trying to help, the people that were selling on Etsy. So we're often asking for a lot.
That's a fantastic example. And what I want to call out about that is that you're willing to share that information with other people in the industry. And that's so true of this industry in general. You guys are willing to talk about things that you've tried, things that work, things that haven't worked, and why. So, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I really got to solve this problem, ask your friends. They've probably seen it before, or they know someone that solved it. It's,
Absolutely.
yeah, you guys are
And
so willing to share.
that is, and Facebook groups and LinkedIn and all the things, I always say, connect with me, ask me questions. If I don't know it, maybe I know someone that does. But we are a group that is happy to share and
Yeah.
happy to educate and happy to share our experiences. And like I said, that reputation and support part is usually pretty major, especially if it's coming from somebody I know, someone in the industry. And now I'm like, oh, well, you liked them. They worked with you on this thing. Maybe they can work on my very specific weird thing that I need for my client, that might wind up helping other people. But we are definitely a group that likes to, we ask a lot of questions, but we are big on sharing. And I'm always happy to, consult or help when it comes to technology. I'm always happy to help them understand at least what our needs are and why they're so important. And I know I'm not alone in that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we see it time and again, and I love that. I mean, it's one of the reasons that I stick around so much. It's the accounting industry, you guys are rock stars, and I love the collaboration. It's not like you're all trying to just silo
Oh,
everything. It's your secrets. You can't share your secrets. Somebody else can't be successful. There's enough
right.
to go around. It's enough.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, rising tide raises all boats. What is
There it
the
is.
saying, right?
There you
So
go.
we're much
There it
stronger if
is.
we're sharing and safely sharing
Yeah.
our experiences.
Safely sharing.
But yeah, no, it's a big thing. I have never, and I think, I mean, maybe a little off topic, but I don't think that we see each other as true competitors necessarily. Oftentimes we're happy to, kind of lean in and help whoever, another accountant, like I said, another app partner, whatever that looks like. Um, just because it might make it better for a bigger group of people.
Absolutely. You see that all the time at conventions.
Yeah.
Top pro advisors like yourself, Liz Scott, Dawn Brolin, and so many others are giving classes on how they've become successful and what their actual workflow looks like, how
Yep.
much they're charging, what apps they're using, just to help, newcomers to the industry. You
Yeah.
see it time and time again with this industry.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a modern evolution. To be honest, I think that's been a modern evolution,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I love it. I think we're moving in
Well,
the right
we
direction.
used to be in silos.
Yep.
Oftentimes, especially desktop, you're on your computer, you're doing your work, you're not, I mean, I didn't do, I feel like, any Zoom calls when I first started, probably for the first year and change. I didn't even know what Zoom was. I didn't need it. I was going on site for clients, right? And so I was working and living in that moment kind of thing. And so there was no worry about it, if you will.
Yeah.
But I started using my own laptop instead of my client's, computer in their office. And as I started working more remote and figuring out how to move things online so I could grow my practice, all of those things changed pretty rapidly. Right. I very quickly learned what Zoom was, and I very quickly knew that I needed it. And even, just kind of adapting, or I guess adopting those tools, was something that I would have never even thought about when I was in school, right? Like I was just like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm just going to do some work and then I'm going to move on. But the reality is the whole environment changed, and the only way that I could have grown my practice was to change with it.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue to user permissions.
Yes.
So I know that you have a bookkeeper, right? And
Yes.
so one of the things that I know we've talked about before, we were talking about it at the start of the webinar as well, was um, you know, going back to the admin conversation too, right? Not everybody needs access to everything. And so when you're choosing an app, like you mentioned, you want to make sure that they have the ability to have different roles. We want to be able to manage permissions based on who the person is, based on just what they need. And the other big one I would say is, make sure they have something that supports either multi-factor authentication or single sign-on, so you can connect to your Microsoft identity or your Google identity, whatever it is. But there's MFA somewhere along that login trail. I think those are pretty key. And then understanding the user onboarding and offboarding. So can you create and remove your own users? Do you have to submit a ticket for that kind of action? Most of the SaaS-based applications are going to be able to manage it yourself. But some others, like a hosting service, if you are still using desktop, then you might have to submit a ticket. So you'll want to make sure you understand the right way to go about that, so you can get that access revoked if and when.
I think also the weird thing that kind of fell in our laps, if you will, as we started using these different applications, even QuickBooks, right? So even who owns the QuickBooks I still call it a file, but who owns that QuickBooks subscription, right? I worked with a client over the last 2 years where they had a bookkeeper who kept their QuickBooks file. And when we called up and they were like, her name is on it. She used her own email address. Our hands are kind of tied, right? And we had to prove who owned the business, etc. But then we learned she never backed up the file to the cloud and all the things. So we basically had to start from scratch. But when I set up a client for an app, for QuickBooks, for whatever it looks like, it's important to me now to recognize who has to be that, primary admin.
Yeah.
It's not me. And so like it used to be just like, oh, I'm gonna start a QuickBooks file, I'm gonna add all the things, I'm just gonna do it, and then I'll just give the client a login. And now I'm like, hey, I need you to sit with me for the next, half hour while we sign up for some things. And then you're gonna give me access so that you control when what I'm using and whatever the case is. I explain why I need it and why we use the different apps, but it's become part of kind of our job to recognize that we may have to offboard someday. What if something happens to me? What if, they can't get access after I'm gone, and all of those different things. It's, it was, I guess it's an eye opener. I've seen it,
For
I've seen
sure.
the horror stories, I've read the horror stories, but those user permissions and the whole control freak factor of like, oh, I need to have admin everything. I don't necessarily have to. Some apps now have accountant access where that client, like I said, owns that subscription. They add you as an accountant. So in some weird way, we're also limiting our own user permissions to protect that client even further.
Yeah, it protects
Also
you, it
protect
protects
yourself.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes,
It,
the liability of it. I don't want it.
exactly.
mutually beneficial. And we've been having so much fun. I think we're a little behind.
Uh-oh, we're a little
more
behind.
meat.
Okay.
There's a little more meat that I do want to cover.
Go ahead.
So when it comes to the SaaS-based solutions, there are some pretty specific things that I want everyone to be thinking about. And that's where the heck does the data live and how is it being transmitted? It should be industry standard at this point that data is encrypted in transit and at rest. That means that when it's sitting there doing nothing, no one's accessing it. It's encrypted. And when you're connecting to it over the wire, it's encrypted. Another great question is where are your data centers? So are those data centers in the US? If you're in Canada, hey, where are the data centers? Are those data centers in Canada? I know there's some different rules about that for different countries. So you want to ask those questions. It's, good to ask just so it's not a deal breaker if they don't own and maintain their own data centers. In fact, I wouldn't expect most of them to
I was
own
gonna say, I don't think that's definitely
No.
not the standard.
Yeah, exactly. But you do want to make sure that the data center is reputable. So it's not just some guy's got 50 servers in his garage and he spun up his own data center, right? Or
Right.
let's make sure we're in something reputable that's SOC, that's a tier 3 or a tier 4 data center, and they'll be happy to share that with you. And then are the data centers compliant with your industry compliance? So again, SOC 2 is the big one, and most of your reputable data centers are gonna have that SOC 2 compliance. All right, Mandy, polling question number 2. It's the WISP. And I know we're not talking majorly about the WISP, but I think it's worth talking about a little bit.
Yeah. Could you maybe describe what it is a little further other than written information support plan?
Yeah,
Sorry,
Mandy, do you want to talk
plan.
about the evolution of the WISP requirement, and then I'll clue everybody in on the latest and greatest update?
I'm not sure if you guys can hear it, but my dog Bella said that she wanted to talk about it. She just started barking right when you guys called on me.
And I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but just maybe give a description and why it's important.
Yep.
No. Basically, the written information security is your security plan. So in the event of a security breach, I guess that's more of the incident, the end of it.
Yeah.
But this really details what your firm is doing for their security, what your end device protection is, what are your different applications, who has access to those applications, what firewall do you guys have, do you guys own your devices, are the employees own their devices? And if the employees do own their devices, what measures you put in place to protect those devices so that they don't leave the company and steal all your data, or
Or your
introduce
QuickBooks spend.
ransomware. Yeah, really, the written information security plan, it sounds really, really scary. And if you look at the template by the IRS, it can look really, really scary, but it's really just laying out what security measures your firm has put in place, who has access to what data, and making sure that you keep that up to date as your firm changes. The IRS, Sam, you always say this better. The IRS says that your security plan has to be as,
You need reasonable security for reasonable risk. So,
yeah,
as a solopreneur, you may not be worried about nation state attacks, right? But you do have to worry about those known vulnerabilities and classic kind of phishing attacks, right? So, reasonable security needs to be in place, and the WISP really just documents how you're protecting against reasonable risk. But here's what's interesting. So June of last year was the deadline for all financial institutions, and they expanded what that definition was to include our friends that are accountants.
Yeah.
They had to have their WISP in place as of last June. Well, what they said in November, this past November 2023, they said, okay, we're now expanding our reporting requirements in the event of a breach. So now anybody that qualifies in our definition of a financial institution that already has a WISP, now they have to tell us if they have a breach that affects more than 500 entities. And so remember our reference before. You might only have 10 clients, but maybe you specialize in payroll for that industry, and each one of those 10 clients has 50 employees.
Right.
You now have 500
The
entities that
ripple
you're
effect.
worried about.
yeah.
It's not the 10, you're
Right.
worried about the 500 now. So if you have a breach, now you're going to have to report that breach to the FTC. And that rule is going to take effect. It takes effect 6 months after the announcements. That'll be May of this year that latest evolution in the FTC rules takes effect for our friends here.
And the reason why they're doing that is they said you had to have a WISP, they said you had to meet these 6 requirements, but now they're going to make sure that you're doing it. Because if you have a breach and you report it back to them and you don't have those in place,
Now we're looking at fines. Yeah.
now we're looking at fines and criminal, jail time.
Yep.
Yeah.
In some cases,
definitely
for sure.
bigger risk, I guess, for us. I mean, it kind of brings puts a spotlight on what we have access to and our clients and what they trust us with.
Yes.
Absolutely. So I'm going to jump, Mandy, to device considerations. I think we've talked a lot about who has access and how's that access protected, but you brought up a minute ago BYOD, so that's employee-owned devices, or we've got those corporate devices. So maybe you purchase laptops and provide them to your staff and get them back, when they offboard. But there's this third concept of a virtual environment that is starting to become a hot topic again. It was a hot topic several years ago when we started having cloud for desktop applications, and then that sort of waned as we went into SaaS. But now it's a conversation again because it surrounds security and providing secure access to your business applications and your clients' business applications, even if they're SaaS based, but enforcing the access to only within a virtual environment that you can control so that you don't have to provide laptops to all of your staff. So that's a conversation I think we're going to continue to have and expound on as 2024 continues. But those are really the 3 scenarios. It's, hey, you let everybody use whatever devices they want, or hey, you only allow access on corporate devices. And there's all kinds of policies you can put in place in your Microsoft as well to limit who can access from what device, right?
Right.
Or do we move to that virtual environment and not worry about what device they're on? So those are the scenarios.
Yeah.
But In a lot of cases, I think that's where managed IT comes in as well, not only for the recommendations, but for the management of it. Because Kelly, I know you didn't go to school so that you could learn to be an expert in Microsoft security
Right.
or in Google permissions. So managed IT brings some benefits. And Mandy, I know this is one where you like to be kind of passionate.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when you guys are, as a firm, are looking at who is going to take over the management of your IT, these are some of the bullet points that we recommend that you look at that provider. Security solutions. Are the security solutions that are part of their managed IT package going to meet the FTC safeguard rules, the IRS safeguard rules, and are they robust enough to actually protect your firm? Kelly, you talked about this earlier, obsessive support. I mean, when you are picking a managed IT firm, you want to make sure that the company that you are picking is going to get back to you whenever you have an issue. You don't want to have to submit a ticket, and then since it's a one-man shop down the street, it's 4 days, you know, before you even hear back from them.
Right.
That's never good.
If you're having, yeah, if you're in the midst of a situation, you want to know that someone's going to be able to answer your call. For sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Maybe, you know, I don't think any company is ever going to be able to answer your call, you know, and it's going to be immediate, like on demand.
Right.
But, you know, they want to have good SLA times during business hours. They're going to get back to you in a reasonable amount of time. And just to jump down to the bottom one here, you want to make sure that the managed IT company, if you call for support, that you're not going to get $1,000 bill, you know, the following month. So look at those companies that have predictable pricing. You pay a monthly price, all your support's included, and then that way you can budget it in to your to what you're expected to pay for the month. You want to make sure that you pick a managed IT company that's going to make sure that your technology you're using is upgraded, and that it's refreshed every so many years, because computers, I mean, as soon as you get them, they're pretty much starting to become outdated. So you don't want your people using a 10-year-old computer. It runs slower, you know, it has the more vulnerabilities in it because the security hasn't been updated. So you want to make sure that they are going to continue to be on top of the technology you have and work with you to plan and budget for those upgrades down the road. And then the last thing that you're going to want to do is make sure that they are in compliant with the regulations that you have to be compliant with. If your data is, you know, you're having them manage your data, say on a server, what's that server being protected? Does it have the next gen antivirus? Does it have redundant firewalls? Does it have disaster recovery in the event that data goes down, you know, that server goes down? So there's definitely a lot of things that you're going to want to weigh.
Also, I'm sorry, just to add to what you were saying, like when choosing a solution, part of it too is working with a company that already works with your industry is going to make it easier to know. And they're going to be able to answer those questions. Are you, you know, compliant with the rules for the IRS? If it's a company that's never worked with an accountant before, then be like, maybe. I don't, let's find out, you know. But if you're going to someone that's known to be to provide that service in this industry and has a good handle on it and probably knows more about it than you do coming into it, hopefully, then you're know it's going to be a lot easier to understand what you're needing, what you're needing, well, they're going to explain to you probably what you're needing, but make it a little bit easier for you to understand.
You are so right, Kelly. And actually that, you know, these are our three packages that we offer for our managed IT services and our managed security services. But these three packages were designed based on Sam and I going to Appy Camp, going to the conventions, talking to our accountants, knowing what the FTC safeguard rules are, what the IRS, you know, rules are, and then basically developing these whole packages around that. I have a lot of my hosting clients that'll call me up and say, you know, I already have an IT provider. I gave them the WISP template. They don't have the slightest clue what to do with the template. Then you start to be like, gosh, are you sure that they have the proper security measures put in place to have you compliant with this WISP template? So yeah, you really want to make sure that not only are you protecting not only are you getting a reputable IT company, but one that has knowledge of the industry.
Absolutely.
Great. And so in the 30 seconds we have left, Mandy, if you want to launch the third poll,
Oh, yes.
just so we don't spam anybody that isn't interested, and folks,
This is a perfect time for you to explain Visory Swissnet as
Oh yeah, Sammy almost forgot
yes.
about that.
So the WISP template is completely free. Feel free to use the QR code and get that downloaded if you don't have a WISP, or if you have one and you want to see if it has stuff that covers all of your industry specific stuff. But the Visory thing. So we acquired a couple of companies that were doing managed security services for wealth management. And that was pretty strategic because we saw the direction accounting regulation changes were going in. And we looked at what the SEC did for registered investment advisors. And I got to tell you, it's like a mirror image of the roadmap. So it's, the SEC said, okay, you have to
eventually gets to us.
You have to do certain things, and then they said, okay, now you have to report if anything happens. Then they said, oh, now you have to start proving that you're doing the things that you wrote down in the thing that says you were doing stuff. So yeah. So long story short, we looked at that. We looked at Swissnet and the direction that accounting was going in, and we said, we really we are turning into more advisors in the space, and helping our clients achieve the security peace of mind that they need. And we're really one company, and so we all came under the same brand, and so that is Visory.
Nice. Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because a lot of people I think have heard of Swissnet. You guys had done a bit, brand recognition, a big push. And so explaining that you guys are part of that umbrella was important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're at the end. We're a minute over,
Yes.
but Kelly, thank you.
Thank
It
you.
was so much fun.
Thank you so much.
It's
Thank you so
always
much.
such
And
a
thank you
fun
all for
time.
joining us.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Have a
All
great
right.
day, everybody.